Welcome, everyone, to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. Today, our session is sponsored by, listen for it, Ruby the Wonder Dog. See, we have all kinds of people who are sponsoring us, even Ruby the Wonder Dog. As always, please do your questions at the end and put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in the chat, but I can't always see those questions if they're over there. So please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them the last 15 minutes of the program today. Today, we are excited to have a wonderful fiber artist, Becky Ashenden. Becky owns Vestuga Weaving School in Massachusetts, where since 1991, she's taught Swedish weaving using traditional equipment and techniques. In 1981, she visited Slotter Glangenton Institute. I know I said that really badly, but in Sweden, and it provided her with an introduction to the Swedish textile world. This training gave her the motivation and passion to pursue weaving as a career. The following 13 years of production weaving and sales allowed her to build a very unique set of skills in the theory and practice of weaving. Through the decades of teaching, Becky has formulated her courses to provide maximum exposure to her techniques, excuse me, and experience and expertise at the loom. Becky's Vestuga Press allows her to be involved in many publishing projects, including translating weaving books from Swedish to English and republishing Swedish weaving books that have gone out of print. We are so excited to have you here today, Becky. Hi.
Hello, and thank you so much, Kathy, for that great introduction and for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you here. We're going to start off with the big question. What is your favorite tea?
Well, the truth is I don't drink tea and I don't drink coffee. I enjoy cocoa from time to time, but it's actually a little bit of a problem because in Sweden, to be polite, often it's one of the first things you're offered is coffee or tea. And I finally learned to ask for what's called silver tea, hot water with a little bit of milk in it. I used to just ask for warm water and they just go, really? You just want warm water? And so I eventually I got more sophisticated. Now I can ask for silver tea, varsågod, and then they're happy.
Oh,
so
good.
It makes us all happy.
Oh, that's good. Well, how did you get started in weaving before you went off to Sweden? How'd you get started?
Well, the very first time that I did anything like this, I looked at a fence out back and saw wool on the fence. Actually, it's not really quite the right order. I was mesmerized by someone spinning at a fair, and I begged my parents for a spinning wheel, and then I dug the wool that was stuck onto a fence out in the backyard in our sheep pasture, and I tried my darndest to teach myself how to spin, and I kind of managed to do it because I'd watched this woman spin for about an hour. And so that was really the beginning. And then I knew I was a little interested in weaving. I did a little bit in high school. And then I went to Sweden when I was 20 with some musician friends. And I need to look at my cue cards. I actually have my photos out here. I can't see them, so I don't know if there's a way for me to see them, but it helps me talk. So if I see it sounds like I'm pausing, it's because I'm having to look at my cheat sheets here of what comes next.
Well, did you go to weave, or you were just with these folks because of the music?
Two friends of mine invited me that were musicians. They had met some Swedish folk musicians, and so we went to visit those folk musicians and stayed with them. And then we stayed for 2 weeks with them. And then we stayed for 2 weeks with the two people from the folk dance community. And then Brigitte, who we stayed with, she had a piece of monk's belt weaving on the wall. And then I was all excited about that, and I asked about it, and she said she wove it. And so then she said, "Oh, well, I have to show you the school I went to." And we hitchhiked to the school. And then that's how I ended up going there. And so I
So
ended up
you
going to
saw
the
the
school the
school and
next year.
you just stayed and took classes?
Well, I came home for a year. It was the next year that
Oh,
I
okay.
had to apply and cross my fingers that I'd get in. And I did manage to get in, and so that's really how that happened. I knew I was interested in weaving, but it was fortuitous. That's all there is to it, through the music connection.
You're so brave. I mean, just to go, I want to do that. I'm going to go back to Europe and learn how to do that. That's
Well, I wasn't
amazing.
that brave. I was a little stupid about it because it was really someone else who had a Swedish loom in a shop, and I said, "Oh, I think I recognize that loom from Sweden." And it turned out she had gone to that same school, and then she looked at me and said, "You should go there." And I thought, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" I was 20. I was stupid, but we've learned since then.
Well, lucky for us that you went. Well, you have we have some examples of your weaving here that you talk about teaching the way you were taught in Sweden, the Swedish way. And these are just beautiful works here and so colorful and great pattern. But I kind of get the feeling that maybe learning over there is more about just the color and the pattern. That is it more like an attitude or the way they look at weaving or approach weaving?
Well, it's a tradition. I would say that Swedish weaving is rooted in tradition, and you see it how it in their daily lives. The table setting, for example, is is inspired by what you see there. Pretty much every table has some kind of textile on it, and it's different from what you see in this country. Even in Lapland, when I visited Dorsvikland, we were at a little cafe, and it was, people were dragging mud in from outside. It was sort of half inside, half outside. There were little plastic tables, and there were paper runners on the tables that were prints of traditional Swedish textiles. And it's so ingrained in the culture that that's one part of it. And another part of the teaching, when I went there, we made whole real things, and that's something that I am really excited to do in my school. We don't make samples. We make, real stuff, whether it's small or big. So we have runners, there's a bolt of fabric there, there's a coverlet. But also what they taught me was the tradition of record keeping, which was so valuable. And so that's a really important part of my classes. You see the little swatches there of fabrics. That's getting ready for a class. And I'm going to hand those little swatches out for people to put in their various project sheets as a record of the fabrics that they've woven in class. So that's an important part of really what I experienced is the Swedish training that I had, keeping a very, very tidy binder. We had to turn them in for grading even.
Wow. Well, go back to the idea that because I hear controversy with that. I've heard the making something versus doing samples controversy a lot. So why do you feel like it's so important that people make a finished item rather than just do sampling?
Maybe two reasons. I feel like if you're going to learn to weave, the point is to make stuff. And if you make a bigger project, it's a very different physical experience from making a little sample. There are different things you learn about the aspects of how to handle the loom and the shuttle and everything about it. And I feel like there are a lot of opportunities for people to make samples in other venues. And so I feel like one of my strengths is teaching, kind of the whole process of making a big thing. The idea appeals to me, and I feel like it appeals to our clientele. And so it's just a choice I've made.
I love it that you not only learned the weaving, but you learned the teaching while you were there. Because in what was it, 1991, you opened Vestuga. Um, so what was the catalyst with that? Why did you go, I want a school?
Um, well, even coming back from Sweden, when I first came back and looked around. So the house on the left is, I'm glad you put that up because that's where I grew up. And so I came back here after my 6 months away as a 21-year-old, and I just been in this idyllic place for those months. And I lived in a little house out back where our store currently is. I lived there for 13 years and did my production work there. And I just, as I walked back up to that little house, I wondered, wow, could this place ever be, a school like the one I just went to? I had no idea how anybody would do such a thing because I had no money, no experience. I was just 21, plenty not to know at that age. But I did have the kind of the dream and the idea back then, and just inspired by the location that I grew up in. And on the right hand side, you see my parents' barn. It was a garage that they built with actually with my college money when I assured them I didn't want to go to college because it just wasn't an environment that I learned well in. I really thrived in that Swedish school environment. And it's really been with me every single day of my life since then.
I'm curious, when you were in Sweden, at any point in time, did you think, this is what I want to do? I want to teach this. I want a place I can teach. Do you remember if that crossed your mind, or were you really focusing on other things?
At that point, I figured, well, this is really something I want to do. I hadn't really thought about teaching. So I went to a lot of craft fairs for 13 years after coming home, and people would ask me, oh, do you teach? And I'd quickly say, no. Because I'm a bit of an introvert, and I like sometimes just being in my studio alone and making stuff. But then maybe about 13 years later, when there's really not a lot of money to be made cranking things out like a little human factory, and my body was starting to complain, I thought, well, maybe we better take a look at this teaching thing. And then I realized that, well, actually, this is a way to recreate what I've always been so nostalgic for, which was going to my school. And I realized, well, to get that nostalgia kind of back, to bring back some of that into my life, I don't have to be a student. If I'm running the show, there's still plenty of things about that atmosphere that I like and enjoy, being around all the great people and just being inspired to do more stuff learn more weaving. When people ask you questions, it's nothing is going to make you learn faster than being in that situation.
Well, you're also involved in a nonprofit called the Fabric of Life. First of all, would you share with us what this organization is, and then why Fabric of Life? What was the catalyst of that?
Well, I went to Convergence the one time. It was in Providence, Rhode Island, so it was near me. I'd never been there before. And I figured, well, I'll just make a big display and see what happens. And a foundation came to me, the Door Foundation, and a couple of folks that chatted with me asked me questions. And one of the things I expressed is what I really would love to be able to do is offer the experience that I had in Sweden to other young people coming along that would like to really immerse themselves in weaving. How can they afford to do that? It's an expensive craft. It takes a lot of space, but really learning when you're young is a great time to learn, when you can really absorb things and you have a long time ahead to use the skills. So it was a dream to be able to do that. And they said, well, I think we can help you do that, but you have to be a nonprofit. So we created the nonprofit in order for them to help us create what is the Vev Immersion class, an 8-week residential program. Originally, I did 16 weeks and I did 15. I was really trying to recreate the 5 months I spent in Sweden. And I've realized the 8 weeks is kind of the happy medium. It's an amount of time people can find in their lives. It doesn't cost as much, so they can fit it in. And our registration has just recently opened up, where it's going to be in the fall this year. But it's a fabulous opportunity for people of any age to come for 8 weeks and just absorb as much as they can. We have scholarships for people that are 18 to 35 years old. And that's thanks to the Dora Foundation. And we also, at Fabric of Life, we also do other programs. We've hauled logs out of the woods with horses. We've built a pavilion that's a timber frame pavilion. and a clay oven. And we've done some agricultural programs, a big gardening program. So it's kind of all like other things that I'm passionate about. And maybe would like to do some kind of woodworking programs. But at my school in Sweden, there were other programs going on at the same time. And I just felt so enriched by that.
Mm-hmm.
So Fabric of Life is a way for me to create the other half of what was going on at the school in Sweden. And so just to add more complexity to my life too, I guess. But it really, it's wonderful. We're planning some great programs of hopefully an oxen demo program that got rained out last year. We'll do this year, and broom making and just other cool stuff that's not exactly weaving, but other important things, either traditional or tradition, but doing it in a modern world.
You're such a respected teacher, and the comments are just nonstop about loved your class, took your class. So you're teaching is very much what people think of when they think of you. And I was just curious, since you've gotten, since you came back from Sweden and you did production for a while and you sold for a while, then you went into teaching. But looking back on that, how do you think your teaching has changed since the day you started over like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever?
Well, I started teaching out of my house. And that was when my body was starting to complain. I thought, well, what about this teaching thing? And I put together a couple of classes, probably even one the first year. And but I really just tried to emulate the way I was taught because I had so much respect for that. And then I need my visual cues. Sorry. But I really do. To see the pictures that I gave
Well,
you for this. There was
well, you talked some about how you changed the length of the classes, that you felt like like you said, you had to find that middle ground. Do you think your approach to teaching is still pretty much the way you were taught, or did you find you had to change it in some way for, American thinking or that kind of thing?
not really. I really keep thinking back to how my teachers taught, but of course, through time and experience, you learn what works and what doesn't, and you
Mhm.
you try to veer towards what does work. And when I was visiting my school some years back, quite a long time ago, it was in 1990. I sat down with a woman who's the headmaster of the school, and and I told her I was starting to teach classes, and she said, well, don't overlook those week-long classes. Those are really good. Because I said, oh, I want to teach the Terminskursen, the term-long course. And she told me, well, don't overlook those week-long classes. And that really stuck with me. And I had the opportunity to ask her about 20 or 25 years later, what did you mean by that? And since she was the headmaster at the time, she was saying actually financially, that's how you could make a thing work.
Mm.
But I think she was right about that. And people can come in for a week, and it's hard, and I found that too. It's harder to find people that can come for a longer period of time. But as far as the way I teach, it's like you learn what works and what doesn't, but it's pretty darn similar to how I was taught. I really had a lot of respect for that. They were fairly strict about the techniques and the skills, but I think that's good because you can do anything you want when you go home. But if you have a very set group of skills and things to go home with, and then you can add that to the rest of your skills. So I feel like I teach what we do here. It works for me, and then people can do with it what they want.
Well, that was going to be my next question was, what was it? Because like if you take a workshop, some teachers are like, oh, I want you to be creative and do your own thing. And then other teachers are like, I want you to learn how to do this, my way, the correct way, however you want to look at it. And kind of like you said, and then you can go do your own creative thing. So I was curious, which was that for you back then? Was it, okay, we're going to learn how to weave. and you're going to do it in a way that works well, that kind of thing. And then you can do your own thing. So is that kind of how you teach? Do you really focus in on learning how to weave? I hate to use the word correctly, but
I don't use that word at all. There is no
thank you.
correct way. Weaving is there's so much of it worldwide. There's so many people have come centuries and more than centuries before us, and there's tremendous knowledge and skill out there. The best I can do is show people what I do, and if that's what they come for, that's darn well what I'm going to do. I'm going to show them how I do things, and I'm not going to make any pretense that it's the correct way. It's a way that works for us here.
Was so funny because I've met people who've been, at your classes, and whether it was a week long or the 8 weeks or whatever. And it's so funny. I almost always get the same reaction of, if I say, did you take, your class of Vishtuga? Yeah. How was it? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I just hear from them how much they learned in your classes. So I was always curious what it consisted of. What was it that they were learning so much of? That's great.
Well, it's a lot of theory of how the threads go up and down and how you mark that down on paper, how you beam the
Oh, okay.
warp so that it doesn't screw up on you. People ask me, how do you get nice edges? Well, it's like two things. You have to beam your warp well, and you have to wind your quills well. Then those are my answers. Somebody else's answers might be different, but I have very, very specific ways that I've not only been taught, but I've done a tremendous amount of production the first 13 years. And when you do production, you learn what works and what doesn't. And so I feel like I have two things. I have the experience of my production days where I churned out a tremendous amount of stuff.
I bet.
And then now the teacher, the way I was taught, but just also my own research and going back to Sweden to learn from other teachers. Now it's a kind of a lifetime's worth of learning and experiencing teaching, which means basically working with people, technique aside. It's a people activity, and everybody learns differently.
It is. It is. Well, I was curious how COVID impacted on Vishtuga's program and on you, because I'm sure it just brought everything to a screaming halt like it did everywhere. So what did you do during COVID different? And did any of that spill over into what you're doing now?
Okay, I've got my sheet here because this did have an order to it that I was thinking about. So, well, one of the first things that COVID did is it allowed me to move my studio. I had been
Oh,
in a
really?
studio in town for, I think, 13, 14 years. And that's because my parents were still living here, and there wasn't a way to do the class here at home where I live. And then when things were shut down for a year, my lease was up, and I really had wanted to have my school be here at this point, but it was hard to figure out, well, how can I even move? I'm so busy and overworked all the time. We can't afford to do it. It took about a year to move. So that's one thing that COVID did. And COVID also, it allowed us to do more preparing with the space in the barn. We worked on the floor a little bit, and then the moving the store was a big deal. I kind of talked about that, but getting the buildings ready for moving into, but also working on my videos. I made videos in the past. I'd already made 3 videos that were available on, first VHS and then DVD. And then I realized, okay, well, here's a chance to, as I was sitting at home, it gave me, otherwise I would never have had the time to really start working on so I have my basics video now, Vevstuga Basics in video form is 20 hours. And I've been the last 2 years working on my band weaving class, which is close to another 20 hours. Maybe it's a little bit less, but it's a lot of detail. It took 2 years to work on that. And I'm working on the Swedish classics class now. It's been filmed. And so that's another aspect of what COVID allowed me to find, the time to work on. Also, what we worked on during COVID were our warps to go, because, people weren't coming for classes. So all classes were canceled. That was pretty challenging. financially. It's like, well, what can we sell? And so we started putting together our warps to go, which are they're kind of like kits, but it does give you a project sheet and a warp, and then you're left. And then last year I didn't have any time to put any of those together, but this winter we're actually about to offer a few more. We have a few we want to offer each month, these coming months of new projects.
Well, you're a great example of making lemonade out of lemons. I mean, that's wonderful that you were able to do all that during COVID. Now, did you start teaching online classes during that time or at all? I know some people did, but
We did, and I had that summer we separated 4 tables out of the barn, so it was all kind of open air and people with their separate looms. And yeah, we did that and then ate meals outside under the pavilion that was part of the Fabric of Life program. And so yeah, we did have some classes and then just and gradually built that back.
um, the thing I see in the samples of your work that strike me is the combination of color and pattern. They have both. They're beautiful in color and they're so fascinating in pattern. So which do you think you're more of? Are you more of a pattern person or a color person?
I would say neither one way or the other. I love color and I love pattern. And they go together. And you can see in these examples, the upper row, those are blanket warps that we do in our basics class. And so I've been choosing colorways for those, and people can chime in. They pick their own kind of contrast little stripe there, or they can swap out colors. But I have a lot of fun putting those color combinations together. And then, of course, pattern is intriguing too, and the way they work together. And it really, all of it is quite appealing to me.
These are beautiful examples. Now, the one on the left, on the bottom, those are bands, right?
Those are bands, those are patterned bands, and many of them are woven with our Vevstuga band loom, which is another, we've been developing equipment here even before COVID, but through it, we had a little bit more time. We worked on my own band loom design. My husband has helped me, build a lot of looms and the prototypes, and now we're in a little bit more of production with them. And also the rigid heddles in the middle are a product that we make. And so those kinds of bands are taught in detail in both my band weaving video class, but also there's a class that we teach here in person that we have a special band week with 2 different classes going on simultaneously, one that addresses using the Vevstuga band loom, and one where people learn to weave big fancy patterned bands on a floor loom, but also on the rigid heddles. And then that picture on the right, the pillows, all those different textures and colors are a sampling of what we're going to do in our Book Nook class coming up this spring, just weaving some incredibly interesting fabrics, interesting to me. And we're going to make stuff out of them. And we even have a new staff member, Jenna Smith, who's our seamstress, and will be sewing pillows and making cute little bags for people, or teaching people how to make the things if they want to learn. So that can go either way. We're really looking forward to that.
Those are just gorgeous, just gorgeous. And I love that. I know it technically probably isn't color and weave, but they really, like you said, they really do work together. That if they weren't, those contrasting colors or the combination of colors really make the pattern pop. These are just beautiful.
Thank you.
So what is, oh, you're a musician. You talked about musician earlier. You're a musician, right?
Yes, I do.
So you were a musician before you were a weaver, right? No?
Actually, I suppose if you go back to the first thing I ever wove, my sister borrowed a loom from a school she went to. It was a local private school that we all went to for the last 2 years. I guess I was a sophomore in high school. And then she brought home a loom for the summer for me to play with because I guess I was interested and she was interested. And so I tried to make up how to weave on that little loom that summer. And I sort of did. And I made up, that's when I made up how to spin too. So I spun, actually the first project I did was a hand spun warp with a hand spun weft. But I didn't know, and I didn't really know how to beam a warp, but I knew how it was supposed to look after it was beamed. So I threaded all the heddles and the reed, and then each thread I stuck under a dictionary at one end of the room, and then I had it all set to go. It's like, now I just crank it on the back, right? Well, of course, the edges, fell off. I didn't know anything about using warp sticks or what some people use paper for. And so when I was weaving it, those edge threads got shorter because they were on a narrower beam. But I cut them off and I used them as weft later. And I did weave fabric and I made a jacket out of it.
Wow.
That kind of came first, although maybe I was forced to take piano lessons starting at age 7. So, but I don't think that counts as being a musician.
I've heard people say that weaving and music are very similar. Do you feel that? Do you see a similarity or a parallel?
Well, they probably use a similar type of brain in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's dexterity, it's patterning. I don't use them together at all, but I think that, yeah, I think they can take a similar kind of brain
Mm-hmm.
to,
I think it's funny when a organist comes in and goes, "Oh my gosh, this is just like my organ." So
oh yes, I have taught some organists,
yeah.
and it is like I got to play on an organ a little bit, and yeah, it's similar in that way because you have to be, your mind has to deal with patterning, and music might not have anything to do with color unless you're seeing colors on your screen that are made by music that's playing. I don't know anything about that, but I've maybe seen it.
Oh,
But yeah, they go together for me. I actually a difference between them for me is that weaving, especially when I was doing production, was very isolating. So I'm just
mm.
working at home alone, and then music was more of a social thing.
Oh, okay.
Although performing music, I have to say, it's sort of like a cheaty way to be social because you're out with a lot of people, but yet you don't have to talk to them a whole lot because you're playing. So you can feel like you're being social and still sort of hiding behind the scenes, even
Limited
though you're
social.
publicly on display, if that makes sense. Actually, playing piano is great because at the contra dance, I just have my back to the room, and that was always safe.
So what is your go-to weave structure?
Oh, I don't have one.
Is there a favorite? Like, I know we don't,
No, not
I don't have
really.
any favorite
I
children.
feel like whatever I'm doing at the time, as long as it's going well, is the current favorite. But I like the variety. So yeah, I really would hate to pick on any single one. It's like trying to pick your favorite child or
Yep,
something.
yep, yep. Well, when you start students out, oh, here we go. This won't exactly go with what I'm going to ask you, but
Yeah.
when you first start students out, do you say, okay, we're going to do plain weave first?
Um, Actually, no, that's not what we do first. I'll talk about the picture, then I'll answer
Yeah,
that
good.
question
This is
better.
beautiful.
So I was anticipating you asking what the most complicated thing was or the most challenging thing. And so this used a draw loom. I did this at Jetta Vandermeeden's house. Some of you might know Jetta Vandermeeden, out near Toronto. And we had a gathering there, and she was inviting me to this gathering, and she said, just think of the most, some complicated thing that you want to try out that you wouldn't have time, you wouldn't find the time to work on at home. And so I came up with this idea, and then she said, and it doesn't even have to work. And actually that's what really kind of sucked me in. No, it doesn't have to work, right? Well, it never really did work properly. So the middle part is not that many shafts on a draw loom, and it's a half satin structure. There's a Swedish book that calls it pseudo damask. But then the bands on the right are actually the same structure that hand woven bands would be on a rigid heddle, the traditional Northern European bands and probably other places. But I did it on a draw loom, but not picking each pattern row. I had one handle picking each pattern row. So I had this really funny, weird threading, which was a backwards setup of um, not really small-on svev for some of you out there that know small-on svev, but sort of like that, but in the back of the loom instead of the front of the loom. And it was a very complicated setup and it almost worked.
Mm,
But I got a
looks
thing out of
good.
it. And so I have the runner in our dining room. But that was probably one of the, not the weirdest, but one of the weirdest setups I've ever done. And I'd like to revisit it and see if I can get it to work better.
Well, as I hear you talking, I am struck by how much you get done. You, well, with all the classes and the, you have, and about making a loom. I didn't know about that. That was interesting. So what do you, I'm assuming at times you can just be completely immersed in your work. So what do you do to recharge if you need to take a break? What is your go-to thing?
Um, well, the honest answer is probably usually more work, but
That's what I was
but it's a different,
wondering.
different aspect of it. Oh, maybe I'm going to play with this little, color tool or something. But my husband and I do go on we're about to in about a week leave for a week in Maine to go cross country skiing.
Oh, good.
And so here I am in my ski outfit I always ski in a skirt, and it's always been a hand woven skirt even since is in my 20s. And those are hand woven gaiters down there. And so we have a really nice time doing that. And actually when we go, we stay in a little cabin and they feed us great meals. But in recent years, I've always taken a lot of rigid heddles and a band loom and some of the videos of just some of the band loom demonstrations are taken in the little cabin that I stay there. So if you go to my band loom video class, you can even watch me putting the gaiters on and skiing off because it's part of the uses. How do you use bands? I got a little silly in that section, but I've used that time to develop that band that I'm wearing. Actually, I do in a demo in the band loom class. There's a video, but that's here at home in front of the fireplace. But that's one thing. And um and then music too. I do play fiddle and accordion and various other instruments. And so that's something I enjoy as well.
I bet. I bet. So what's next for you? Busy woman, what is next for you?
Ah, well, somewhat more of the same. I'm going to get my photos out so I can see what, 'cause I do need that to remind myself. Actually, I rely on it. Um, Here's the page 13. So, Vevstuga tools. I mentioned the band loom that I designed that we're working on, but we've designed a warping mill that I'm excited about and various other little tools, but there are a lot more tools that I'm working on. And yeah, all sorts of things in that department of just things that make the loom more ergonomically easy to, especially the tie up, easier to set up. So I'm working on something there that's brand new. And let's see, number two, what do I have? Books. So yeah, as I'm a visual person, I need my visual notes.
That's
Um,
good.
so Webstuger Press has got a whole long line of books that it would like to publish. We just recently published the Daldrell book, but I have another one in the works that hopefully will be published later this year. So you just have to stay tuned for that because that will be something very exciting. That was number two. Number three, oh yes, like so here's a funny story. Last fall, I got all ready to do a video class for rep weaving. So my rep weaving video class is all set up in the barn, ready to go. And it was scheduled for its week. I'd scheduled it a year in advance. And then my videographer got COVID. And that was the 1 week in the year that it was possible to do it. And then, Thanksgiving classes came, and then Thanksgiving came, and then winter came, and now it's cold in the barn. And so it's sitting there still. I have, I think, 9 looms set up, and I've got my displays set up, ready to film. And we're just going to hopefully there'll be a warm week in the spring when I'm not having to do other things, because I need to have all those things woven off for classes. So that was a bit of a monkey wrench, but that's what happens in life.
That's true.
So that's a video class, but I haven't finished editing the Swedish classics class yet. So I've got plenty of editing to do before I get to the rep one. What's my next picture here for myself? Oh, it's on this page. Oh, yes. So there's a big exciting thing we're planning. And it's how everything goes. You hope to do it in the fall, but it hasn't happened yet. We're planning a new building. We didn't break ground last fall, and I don't know if we're going to do it this spring, but hopefully at least by sometime this coming year. And it'll just give us more room to expand our operation here. And we pulled the logs out of the woods with,
Wow.
that was about a year, well, last March, we pulled the logs out of the woods, and we had a sawmill come and mill them up. And that was very exciting. And so they're sitting down there in the bottom of the field in piles. And so that's that. And there was
Waiting
one other
patiently.
picture I had here to remind myself what else. So I got too many things going on. I can't remember it all at once.
You're a busy
A
woman.
little dark here. Oh, yes, that's what I had intended to talk about, was the just the continued contact with people in Sweden. All of the people I've had contact with, my great teachers and mentors, and the makers there that we have great relationships with. So just a continued contact with all of those wonderful people. And I feel like that's a lot of what we have to offer is I have this connection with Sweden, and I've been strengthening it over the years.
Do you go like every year or every 2 years or something like that?
It was really sporadic. I went the first time, and I went the next year for a little reunion. Then it was 13 years before I went again, because I couldn't afford to go. And then I started going a little bit more frequently. And then I got too busy with the school, and I couldn't get away and didn't have the money. So I kind of spent another 10 years not going. And now we've gone a few times again. So, but I really like the opportunity to keep up the language. And I think that makes a big difference in just, communicating with people there that we work with on sometimes a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I keeping the connection strong is really important. And bringing teachers from over there is another thing that keeping those connections strong with not only makers, but people that write books, that are authors, strengthening those connections, and also working with people to bring over here as teachers. As we brought Monica Helene for several years, and we've brought other Swedish teachers. And this year we're bringing Osa, who's written one of the books I've translated and published. So, yes.
Well, actually, that's one of the questions that someone had sent in was, are you keeping up your relationships over there? So that's
it's
great.
important too. And then, so we've gone to this, not last September, but the September before, we went to the Swedish Weaving Conference, which I've been to many times before, just to be there as a visitor, I guess what you call it. But we went with a whole booth, and we set up a big booth, and it just felt like a really, really wonderful way to connect with people and show them what we're doing, and to find out what's going on over there.
Well, we have a lot of questions, and I'm sorry, y'all, we probably won't get to all of them, but we'll get to them as many as we can. So let's head to that, okay? This is from Sue. Hey, Sue. She said she is so excited to see Becky. I took her basics weaving. That is anything but basic. Many thanks to her team, beautiful studio and grounds, and the yummy lunches. Way to go, Sue. Question: have you written that cookbook yet?
It's in the works. Barbara Blumenthal has volunteered to help me with that. But then when I needed someone in the office when we were kind of coming out of COVID, I called her up and said, Barbara, can you help us in the office? And so it kind of took her time away from the cookbook.
Uh,
Um, but now we have Dave full-time in the office. And so Barbara's going to have a little bit more time, hopefully this winter to work on that. But yeah, that's a question that's been asked for about 35 years. And yes,
you'll
we
get
are
there, right?
working
You'll
on
get
it, and
there.
be patient with us. It'll happen.
This is from Barbara Myers. What is the difference between Swedish and Norwegian weaving?
I don't really have a good answer for that. I've never lived in Norway. I don't speak Norwegian. The languages are similar, but I can't really understand. They obviously weave in both places. There were Norwegians at the Vev the Vevmässan, which is the Swedish weaving conference. And so I would say there's a lot of similar aesthetics, but there are certainly going to be regional differences. But I don't have a really good answer
Okay.
for that. But they're similar, I'm sure.
This is from Suzanne Neiman. Becky is also a wonderful, capital letters, musician. During the basics class, her and her husband played music while we twisted the fringe on our blankets in the barn. How many different instruments do you play?
Depends on what counts as playing. But you can start with I'm most comfortable on piano accompanying fiddle tunes. And sometimes I play some solo tunes, and then piano accordion, I play music from the Balkans, so from Bulgaria, Macedonia, former Yugoslavia, and maybe other things, but mainly in those areas. I play fiddle. I play tunes from Sweden and from Cape Breton Island primarily. And I play string bass I've mostly played traditional dance music.
Oh, okay.
And then you get a little more I have played some things in a long time, but the Santuriu it's a hammer dulcimer from Greece. I enjoyed that for quite a while, and be nice to get back to it. The Godulka is a Bulgarian folk fiddle. It's sort of shaped like a pear that you kind of play like this. And I've tried out the gaida a little bit, which is a Bulgarian bagpipe. And I play various kinds of Macedonian Bulgarian drums, or Middle Eastern, a dumbek and a tapan. And then there are probably other little things I'm forgetting about, but I used to play, I was a music director at a camp out in California. First, I played for 10 years, and I was a music director for another 10 years. And so I got to work with wonderful musicians and kind of make programs for them. And it was a fun time. And that was it's called Folklore Camp. And they would bring in teachers from different countries. Always there would be Balkan music, but also Scandinavian and from many other corners of the world. It was really wonderful.
Oh, it sounds amazing. You're a busy woman. I was curious about this too. How much Swedish did you know before you went to school that first time? Or when you went over there for the musician thing, and then by the time you went back for the
for the musician thing, nothing, but everyone in Sweden speaks English, so that's no problem.
Oh, okay.
I was enamored by the language, certainly. I was attracted to it because it just sounded so fun. But then I took a class at UMass that was 3 days a week, I think 2 hours a day. It was sort of an intensive session for the semester before I went to Sweden. When I got there, I couldn't understand anything at all, but I had a good kind of basic knowledge of the basic grammar, and I like languages. So I studied to one semester before I went. Then the middle of February, at one point, I woke up and I started being able to speak. So 6 weeks in, but I refused to speak any English with anyone. So I was just kind of quiet and listening and tired. That's how that worked.
Bernadette wants to know, do you offer tours to Sweden?
Running a tour is a kind of a different skill set from mine, like hugely. But what we did do last year is we offered a class at Sätergläntan, and that happened because that's what I was saying earlier. We were at the the weaving conference, and I took Tanya and Eva were with me, and I wanted to show them, introduce them to everyone. We visited lots of places, lots of factories we do business with, but also my school. And we met the teacher there, and Stefan, and he spoke beautiful English, and he was a lovely person. And so I just kind of popped out, hey, can we bring some students here? And said, oh, maybe we could do that. And so it was really because of making that connection on the spot, and he agreed to it, that we were able to have that class there. It wasn't really a tour, because people brought themselves to Sweden and we met them there. But yeah, I'm probably not cut out to be a tour leader. That's too much computer work. You know what I mean, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Don't you do a lot of that?
You have plenty of skill sets. Don't worry about it, Becky. You don't have to have that one too.
I know where to draw the line. Sometimes, only sometimes.
Right. Well, I know people are asking about this. Can you talk a little bit about what that conference that you mentioned? You said that Ray went to the International Weaving Conference over there.
Well, it's a Swedish weaving conference. In fact, something Lillemor Johansson, I believe, headed up a long time ago when she came years ago and visited Convergence. And then she thought, oh, we should have one of those. And I think that's when she started the Vev Magasinet. And so she really, I think, spearheaded the thing, but a lot of other people as well are involved with it. So where I've spent most of my time at it maybe is in the vendor hall. There's just a lot of booths with wonderful things for sale. So that's one part of it. But then there's another hall that represents all the schools, all the different weaving schools around Sweden. And so each of those will had it last time, had a booth and information. You could talk to people that were involved and see what they do. And then there were programs to go to and lectures and various talks. And there are some bus tours. So I think it's, in some ways similar to what happens at Convergence, but of course it's all textiles in the Scandinavian style. And
so there's classes?
I don't know if they're actually classes. I suppose I should know the answer to that, because
oh, that's all right.
But there were certainly talks you could go to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I went to some of those some years back when I went, and I said, oh, what else can I do? And I went to various talks, and I think some of it is even catered to non-Swedish speakers, because they have an international, appeal to come to this. And it's wonderful. There's incredible displays and exhibits, maybe is what I want to say, exhibits of Swedish, of just weavings from places. And it's a place also I got to meet with Andreas, and we're planning to bring Andreas Muller to teach a class last summer, and unfortunately he ran into visa problems. But he's from Germany, so it's just a place to network and meet other people, which is really quite wonderful.
Amy Stephen wants to know how you moved into book translation and publishing. She said your collection is fabulous. How did you start doing that? It was a matter of need?
Yes, it was totally a matter of need when I was starting. You got it. When I was starting to teach, and especially teaching drafting, there's a little stapled pamphlet that we used in school. And I looked through all my American books for drafting, and it's just not the way I was taught. And there are reasons that I really liked the way I was taught. And I thought, this book, actually, I keep coming back to this one. It presents it the best way possible. And then I'm not really good at reading or typing. And I'm more of a hands-on visual active person. And I don't do so well at the reading and writing thing. But I was visiting a friend of mine in Maine, Beth, and I said, I'm kind of interested in translating this book. And so we were just, maybe she even encouraged me, because I was saying how I needed that book. And I think what we did is I just chatted. I read the book in English to her, and she just started typing. And I thought to myself, hey, that's easy. And so eventually I ended up doing it various ways, but now I have dictation software that I use with most of my emails because typing is a big problem for me. But translating a book is like, I don't really read or write. It's like, why do I translate books? Well, if I can do something physical, like translate out loud as I'm reading it, I can stay awake while I'm reading it and it's getting translated. And then you just fix it later or somebody else fixes it later.
Now,
So
I'm not
that's
sure
kind of
what
how I
this,
got into it, and just needing the books and realizing what an incredible resource books are. And it's really important to keep the knowledge alive in that way, because I learned a lot in my first course in Sweden, and I've been back several times and learned from other people. But I've actually learned an awful lot from those Swedish books myself. And I know that other people can too, if it, only is available to them.
well, I have so many questions here I'd love to ask, but we've run out of time. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to everybody that you didn't get to ask, but some of these questions I know you can find out from Becky's website if you go there, especially questions about Veststuga and people are asking about staffing and classes and that sort of thing. Be sure you go to the website and check it out. It's vevstuga.com. I know I pronounce it badly. I'm working on it. You can go there and learn all about the classes when they're offered and that sort of thing. Becky, I can't thank you enough for being on here today. It was a pleasure. I've heard so much about you for over the years and your teaching and everything. It was an honor to get to actually talk with you. So thank you so much for being on here today.
Well, thank you too. And I've seen, your name for years, and I love the work that you do. It's very important. And so together we'll keep this going. Thank you so much.
I need to take a class. That's all
Come
there
on
is
up.
to it. I need to get up there and do my week or 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks. That's what I want.
Yeah. We still have some openings, so jump
Okay.
on board. Book Nook
Okay.
or basics or something fun like that.
Oh, I'd have to start with the basics. I want to learn everything you know. Thank you, Becky. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We want to thank our sponsor today, Ruby the Wonder Dog. I hope she got a lot out of this. I hope she really enjoyed it. She's a better weaver now for it.
Thank you,
And
Mary.
dogs makes everybody happy. So thank you, Ruby the Wonder Dog. If you want to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, you can do that. You can go to the website and go to the Textiles and Tea section, the tab, and you can sign up there for a date that you would like to sponsor. If you're a business, a guild, an individual, or a group of people, we've had a lot of people band together to sponsor a particular artist or a date that they want to celebrate. So check that out. If you have any questions, you can call us also. We'll be glad to answer any questions. Small Expressions is traveling. And as a matter of fact, it is at the Yadkin Valley Fiber Center. If you want to go see it, it's there until Valentine's Day. What a great gift to give yourself is go see that for Valentine's Day. You can go see it there, and it's traveling next to Nashville at the Vanderbilt University at the Sarrat. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's Sarrat, Sarrat Gallery at Vandy. So if you want to go travel and see it there, if you're in the area. But what's so kind of neat is that tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern will be the virtual jurors talk, and Alice Wood will come on and talk about how she selected these pieces and what she saw in the works and what she thinks about the pieces. And what a great way to watch that before you go see the exhibit. Or if you don't get to see the exhibit, you can see it through her eyes. It'll be a great talk. And it's recorded. So I know at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, not everybody can watch it, but it is recorded and you can watch it whenever you want. Now it's $10 for students. It's 10 and the same for individual members, household memberships. And also if you're a professional artist, it's $10. We want to thank everybody for their donations and their memberships. Those things help our programming, whether it's Textiles and Tea, Careers in Textiles, the Guild Retreat Saturday, which was fascinating. I watched all of it. And to hear all these great ideas from all the other guilds was wonderful. But those programs happen through your generous donations to the Fiber Trust or and through your membership. So go online if you would like to sign up or make a donation at weavespindye.org. If you've missed any of the episodes, if you want to watch the one from today again, you can do that by going to the HGA Facebook page. It's also on YouTube. And I encourage you to subscribe, because if you do, when we upload a new episode, you'll get a notice to say it's on there and ready to watch. Thank you so much for joining us today. What a great program. Doesn't it make you want to just go weave for a week? Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great week. Next week, we've got Anna Lisa Hedstrom, and we're excited to have her on also. Have a great week and happy tea.